share the word with us. So now let us hear the word of the Lord from Exodus 20. And God spoke all these words. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Honor your father and mother, so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not give false testimony against your neighbor, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. When the people saw the thunder and lightning and heard the trumpet and saw the mountain in smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, "Speak to us yourself, and we will listen, but do not have God speak to us, or we will die." Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you to keep you from sinning." The people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. The word of the Lord.
Thank you, Lynn. Good morning, family. How are we doing? All right, it's so good to be here. Thank you, Pastor Julia, for this opportunity to join you on this series, The Way Out, a study here out of the book of Exodus. We're at a critical point in ancient Israel's history, very critical here. This is a turning point that they are actually experiencing. They're at Mount Sinai, where God actually had told Moses that this will be a sign. Before I move forward, do I need to adjust this? Okay. I don't know. All right. He said this place where they are, he said, "This place will be a sign to you, Moses, that I will go with you. I'm with you. You will be here, Mount Sinai, to worship." And they're actually at that place, that juncture in their life where as they step in, they will no longer be the same community. Before I dive into that, I want to ask you a question. I want to know, what comes to mind when you hear the word law or commandments? You can just shout it out, and Pastor Julia just talked with the kids, and then kids are like, "Boo!" No. What comes to mind? Structure. Yep. Do's and don'ts. Restriction. Yeah, typically it's a negative connotation. It's rules, it's regulations, it's restrictions. We hear that, but do the words grace ever come to mind? The word love ever comes to mind when we talk about law or commandments? This brings to mind this, a while back I launched a group called a fatherhood initiative called Calling All Dads. And during that time, we launched that project, we launched that project And what happened was we did a fundraiser. We were doing a fundraiser. It was a car wash, and we had partnered with a gas station. And I remember being at that gas station. We had a group of men there, and we were out there. I had my daughter with me, my middle daughter, she was with me. And we were just out there trying to get the car's attention, you know, hey, over here, over here. And I saw my daughter who had found a friend, and it was a boy. And they were in the 4th grade, so I was watching them at the time. I'm watching them. I'm like, okay, here we go. And as we continued to get the cars, you know, I focused on getting cars over into the lot. And at one moment, I looked at my daughter, and I yelled, Janae! Janae! I yelled, and I said, get over here. It wasn't because she was playing with the boy, as you may suspect, but it was because she was getting too close to the street. For her, it could have been the idea of I'm giving a command because I'm restricting her freedom. But it was not a restriction of her freedom. It was an act of grace to protect her very life. How are you when it comes down to protecting the lives of those that are precious to you? You know, when they're at transition points, when, you know, you're teaching them how to cross the street or to skate, you put them in bubble wrap, right? What about when they're learning to drive a car? You're giving them laws. You're giving them commands what not to do, even though you have discipled them in the opposite direction. Oh, okay, I'll look on this side. You've discipled them being an aggressive driver, a distracted driver. You have. We modeled it wrong. But God, honestly, in this moment, as we come back to it, He has already modeled His love. He had already modeled His care, His compassion for this people. And He said, you will be a treasure for me, a precious treasure. And then we get here to where we have these commands. Verse 1 here. It says, and God spoke all these words, saying, notice who's speaking here. I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. God is speaking here. And He's letting them know that I am the one who brought you out. And what's something that is often missed when we read the 10 Commandments is that deliverance actually came before one rule. He delivered them. He brought them out of Egypt before He gave them one rule. So the rules were never meant to be a passageway for deliverance. They had already been delivered. And He wanted to remind them, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land. This is an act of grace. And God, He gave us this gift of the law, not to restrict us. It wasn't about restriction. It wasn't about limiting their freedom, but it was to protect their freedom and also to reflect His character. He's telling them, ancient Israel, this is who I am, and this is who you will be, and invite us as well into the fullness of the life that He actually designed for us. This was the purpose of giving these commands. David said it like this in Psalms 119:45. He says, listen, I will walk in freedom. And why? Because freedom is connected to keeping your precepts, keeping your word, freedom and obedience. Walter Brueggemann said these are the structures of covenant life. And let's start talking about these commands. First one, he says, listen, guys, you got to get this one, because if you miss this one, you'll miss everything else. Again, you shall not have any gods, any other gods before me. No other gods in my presence. Again, I am the one who brought you out. When you had nothing, you had no power, no military might, I am your deliverer. And I brought you out, I delivered you, I saved you not to sit down, but I saved you for a purpose. I saved you as a treasure, my treasure, to put you on mission. The mission is to show the rest of the world who I am. I'm coming to you to reveal myself to you, Yahweh, so you can be a representative to the world of who I am. No other gods. You will later hear this in Deuteronomy 6:4, where he says, listen, this is what he's calling us to. It's the Shema, to love the Lord with everything you have, all of you. Not half-heartedly, but all your soul, all your mind, all your strength, everything, your intellect, to love me. To love me. The God of justice, the God of righteousness, the God of hope, the God of deliverance. And anytime we place any other God where he belongs, we're going to be misaligned. And we'll miss it. And he says, no, this is what Yahweh calls for. He calls for complete devotion. If you're taking notes, he is calling us for complete devotion. None beside him. He wants all of you, brothers and sisters. Every last aspect of your existence. He has to be number one. He has to be the one. And then this one, next command actually ties into the other one, because he's saying, now, I want you to understand who I am, Yahweh, not the God of your imagination. And then he moves on by saying this here. You shall not make for yourselves a carved image and likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them and serve them. Don't carve out anything in your image, your likeness, what you're thinking. Don't carve out anything. Anything in heaven, earth, water, you shall not bow down to them, nor serve them. For I, again, he reminds them, I am the Lord your God. I am the Lord your God, and I am a jealous God. And that jealousy is not like us. He reserved the right because he's given us everything. He said, I'm a jealous God. I'm jealous for your protection. I'm jealous for you to live the life I intended you to live. I'm jealous for your freedom. And he says, jealous God, visiting the iniquity of their fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. But showing mercy to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. He says, guys, don't carve out a God of your liking. Anytime you carve out a God of your liking, you're going to reduce God. You're going to reduce Yahweh. If you say, hey, this is it, here he is, because we often do carve out gods in our image, in the image of a donkey. Okay, I'll look on this side. Or an elephant. You reduce him, and not only you reduce him, you reduce yourself, as Carmen Joy Imes would say, because you actually were created in his image and after his likeness. So he says, do not do that. If you want to be the community that I've called for to represent me well, then this is what you need to do. So Yahweh, he calls for our complete allegiance. your worship is going to follow your allegiance. He said, I want your complete allegiance. I want all of you. Set your affections on things above and not the things on the earth. He's a God of righteousness. He's a God of justice. He's a God of hope. This is who he is. He says, set your affections there on who he is. Don't make God in your own image. It's interesting how sometimes, we serve a God who actually agrees with everything that we agree with. That's a carved image. Question for you. What's in a name? Have you ever thought about that, y'all? What's in a name when you think about it? In fact, it's so interesting that we pay money because of the name, right? Because that name actually speaks to quality or what have you. We literally we're brand advocates for companies. I try to be, as bland as possible because you literally pay to wear polo sign. Have you ever noticed that? And everybody honestly wants their name on you as a brand advocate because there's something to it. There's something to a name that connects with character. Mercedes, what comes to mind? Some of you, may have one out there. Ford, what comes to mind? I remember there was a time in history because of people's experience with Ford, and if you work for Ford, this is not a slight, this is just what I'm sharing, but there was a moment that I remember because of people's experience with Ford. They said it was an acronym. Found on road, dead. It was because their experience, and again, this is not a slight, it's because of their interaction with Ford. They were like, these guys will let you down. And of course, they've improved. They're on another level, let me just say that. But that was their experience because that name actually connected with character. It connected with their experience. And see, when we go to this next command, it's deeper than what we think. He says, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Do not do it. Do not take his name in vain, for the Lord will not hold you guiltless who take his name in vain. Most of the times we feel like when we hear this is when we say God's name when we're angry or surprised, and the curse word. It goes deeper than that. Yes, his name carries weight. And no one likes anybody playing with their name. I just led a chess club for a summer program, and I had a couple of kids. They were like, Mr. Donearl. At first, it was a little difficult saying Donearl. Donearl. No, it's Donearl. Don and Earl, 2 names, 1 location. And they were like, well, can we call you Donald Duck? And I'm like, no, I'm not Donald Duck. That's not who I am. Come on, put some respect to my name. But it goes deeper than that. To take his name in vain, to take actually means to bear, means that you are actually representing me. That means you are the symbol, the image of who God is. And how are we representing God? When we misrepresent him, we're actually taking his name in vain. We learn later the high priest actually had the name of God on his forehead on a plate. In the name of Israel. And last week, Pastor Julia talked to you about what in chapter 19, verse 4, what he said. He says, listen, guys, I've delivered you, but again, I delivered you for service. This is what I want you to be. I want you to be this treasure for me for the reason of being priest. Every one of you are to represent me. You are to wear my name. How are your actions communicating God's justice? How are your actions communicating God's love? Do you have to agree with me in order for me to love you? Do you have to look like me, dress like me, in order for there to be justice? And to take his name is so much deeper. As we're representing God, we're bearing his name. He said this segula, which is a treasured possession. He said, this is who you will be to the nations. So we must reflect his character. He calls for our complete respect. We're to respect that name. And also the proper representation. We need to represent him, not represent ourselves. We are not extensions of news networks. We are an extension of the kingdom. And guys, we launched in 2019, just in time for COVID. Stepped away from a nice job as a senior IT project manager, following God, step in that 2019, 2020 hits, and it's like, God, are you serious? And a multi-ethnic group navigating through the racial, the political, the social tension of that day. We had to say, guys, this is not about right or left. This is about the kingdom. This is about God's kingdom, and we have to represent him in this moment because there will not be a segregated place in heaven. There will not be sections over here and over there. No. Read it, Revelation 7:9. He calls us to represent him now. Next one, he says this, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. I'm glad you guys are hanging in with me. We're almost there. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. He says, but the seventh day is a Sabbath of the Lord God. In it you shall not do work, nor your sons, not just you, but this is your entire family, your daughters, your male servants, your female servants, your cattle. Everybody is supposed to take a break. Nor your strangers is living in your house. This rest is for everyone, a foreigner. He says, within your gates. For in the 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath, and he hallowed it. And you guys had an amazing message. I believe it was last week about the Sabbath, or the week before about the Sabbath, this rhythm of 6 and 1. God, guess what? I grew up in a community where they used to say, this is real talk, they used to say that God or the devil doesn't take a day off. That's what they would tell us. The devil doesn't take a day off. It was until later I realized, well, God did. So who are we trying to be like? Because if you don't take time, if you do not get that rest, you will be like him. Frustrated, anger, short. It's wired into our existence, our very being, that we are to take the 6 days and take one off. And when I started, honestly, it was until after I did a vocational excellence course because, I'm doing so much in the community, doing so much at home, doing so much at the church, leading the school through the pandemic. I got a lot of stuff going on, and I got challenged in that moment you need to take a Sabbath. Like, I can't do that. That's what I said. And the Lord pressed in my spirit. He says, the reason you can't do it is because you don't trust me. I said, no, I trust in the Lord with all my heart and lean not to my own. He says, you don't trust me. You trust you. You trust that if you keep working, it's going to happen. And he challenged me. And I've learned to pull back, to take that rest. And I'm going to be honest with you, I celebrate progress, not perfection. Because my wife would say. Oh, brother. This quote, Rabbi Heschel, he says this, I love this. He says, 6 days a week we wrestle with the world, wringing profit from the earth. On the Sabbath, he says, we especially care for the seed of eternity that is actually planted in our souls. He calls it a sanctuary in time. This Sabbath day is a sanctuary. It's shelter in the flow of time. It's a gift. It's a gift. So God calls for our complete trust. Yahweh, he calls for our complete trust. And we'll come through these real fast here. Honor your father. Honor your mother, that your days may be long upon the land which the Lord God is giving you. Have you guys noticed that parents are the first authority for children? This is the structure. They're the first level of authority. And we can look around and just see the effects of this not happening right now. And it's two-sided. It's just not for the kids to honor, but it's also for us as parents, for those who are parents, to recognize the weight that it means that I am modeling for my children the voice of God. How can they be obedient to God and not hear my voice? I am modeling, and honestly, children get the perception of God from you. If you are too harsh, always condemning, guess what they're going to think about God? They're going to think God is the same way. So he's calling us to that. And trust us to passing God's truth, his values, and his discipleship or discipline. And this authority is not absolute, but it's derived from God. As we steward, as we are leading. So he calls us to respect Yahweh. He calls us to respect for a delegated authority. All right, murder. Do we have to have a conversation about this? we don't. Don't murder. In fact, not only that, he says, I want you to be a life-giving community. Not just one that won't. And Jesus expanded on that, friends. He expanded on that, what that really means. Yahweh, in this moment, he calls us complete respect for life. And this is not a political statement or anything of that nature. It's just not life and inception. It is life throughout life. To respect and to care for life. To be a life-giving community. Because there's one life giver, and that's him. We are to seek peace and pursue it. We are to seek reconciliation. We are to meet the needs and preserve life. In fact, he says, when your enemy hungers, don't use food as a token, a leverage point. When your enemies hunger, he says, feed them. This is the Yahweh. This is the God that was revealed. He says, not committing adultery. What is God calling us here? He's calling us for covenant faithfulness. And again, Jesus expands on the Sermon on the Mount. He says, guys, you think you're cool because you think you're free because, y'all haven't killed anybody? He says, but what about that anger in your heart? He says, because that's the seed of it. Here, he said, what, adultery? He's like, nope, I haven't gone there. He says, nah, I hear what you're saying, but what God meant for that was what was in your heart if you've looked at a woman. And it goes both ways. And said, And you lust in your heart. He says, you've already, he's telling us there's an issue here. There's a condition here in humanity. Because it breaks down community, family. When we cross those barriers, when we cross those boundaries, when we cross those lines, it impacts communities for generations. People are hurt. Stealing. Again, there's no argument to these. God is calling, he's calling for us to walk in fidelity. He's calling us for integrity. And not only integrity, but justice and generosity. Because he says, later Paul talks about stealing. He says, guys, don't steal, but work. Why? Why work? So you can give. So you can contribute to life. So you can contribute to what's happening here. And it was shared last week, the amazing things that are happening because you're giving. The impact that you make. He says, don't steal. Don't take what's not yours. Credit. Don't take what's not yours. Don't take it. But live in this. If you want to be this community that I've called for, if you want, and then truth, being committed to truth. We know the whole, everything, humanity failed because of a lie, a mistruth. And Jesus would later say, guys, he says, listen, you're of your father, the devil. He said he's a murderer from the beginning. And the only thing he is Satan is credited for creating is a lie. He is the father of lies, of mistruth. Progenitor of mistruth. And he says, don't lie on each other. Tell the truth. And sometimes it's holding back when you know you should be honest with people. In love. Don't lie. Don't mess other people's character. Don't do that. It's damaging to the community. And it's not what I've called you to be. These are gate rails. These are guidelines. And then last, he says this, you should not covet your neighbor's house. Don't covet your neighbor's house. You should not covet your neighbor's wife, male servant, female servant, his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that is your neighbor's. And guys, here's another shift here, because covet, he's like, how do you know you've actually coveted? This is internal. This is a desire that you don't necessarily really just see. But he says, guys, if you want to be that community, that life-giving community that is representing me, he says, you cannot allow this to be in your heart. He's calling you to be a community, to live a life of contentment. Not wanting what someone else has. Y'all know how it is on social media. You see everybody else seem like they just have all the good life, the trips and this, that. Don't want what they have. The saying is, the grass is not always greener on the other side. He wants you to be thankful for what he has given you. To live a life of contentment. Godliness with contentment is great gain. Don't laugh, please. But this is me back in 92. Because we all know that, here are the rules, and, we just follow the rules. It just, boom, that's what it meant. I was in boot camp, inner city kid from Flint, Michigan, and I'm looking that way because I was experiencing things that I didn't see on the commercial. So I was smiling there. But at 19 years old, I was there. They gave me this Blue Jackets manual. It was the law, the command. This is what it means to be a sailor. And it honestly, again, it just words written on a piece of paper. But I remember after boot camp, one of the things they told us to do, they said, guys, whatever you do, they said, and I went to boot camp in Orlando. They said, whatever you do, they said, do not go to Orange Blossom Trail. And Orange Blossom Trail, I guess, was notorious for whatever you want to find was there. I'll just say that. And let me tell you, the do not. Something about human nature that when they say don't do, don't touch, you guys, can you imagine the first place me and several other people went? Yeah, Orange Blossom Trail. Because of human nature, there's something that is on the inside of us. And brothers and sisters, the struggle is real. Paul wrestled with this in the 7th chapter of Romans. He says, guys, the things that I desire to do, the good that I desire to do, I don't do it. The evil that I don't want to do, he said, that's what I do. Anybody witnesses here? It's like I keep finding myself struggling. The struggle is actually real. And he's like, what can I do to deal with this issue that I'm facing? This dilemma. He says, I thank God through Jesus Christ our Lord. So friends, Yahweh, he actually made a way. And he made a way through Jesus. Listen what he said here. This is the covenant. This is the prophet speaking. This is the covenant I will make to the people Israel. After the time, declared the Lord, I'm going to put the laws in their minds and write them on their hearts. They will not just be in a book. They will not be on stone tablets. But he says, I am going to write them inside of your heart. I will be their God, and they will be my people. So yes, Yahweh made a way. Jesus, Yeshua, which means Yahweh saves. How many of y'all are grateful for Jesus? I'm grateful because, see, on that mountain, they were 50 days after they were delivered from Egypt. And if I call the band up? Okay, we can call the band. 50 days away from their deliverance in Egypt. And after the resurrection, they were 50 days after the resurrection, where Jesus had met them and said, listen, go to Jerusalem. I am going to give you power. I'm giving you power to become my witness, to be that community of priests, that kingdom of priests, to be that chosen people. I'm calling you there. I'm going to give you power on the inside. Not that you have to follow these rules in your own strength, but he said, I will give you the power. I'll give you the power so you can walk this thing out from the inside out. And I love, and I don't know if he's here, but Dr. Gary Burge, he talks about Jesus in John. He says the prologue of John is not, and I'm quoting here, about a message that offers hope, but about the message that is the only hope. The only hope. It is not about an idea, but a person. The Word became flesh tells us that God's intent on communicating with us about not mere concepts. He is intent on communicating about himself. In the beginning was a Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. Later on, it says, all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. The Word. Later, he says, that Word actually became flesh and dwelt among us, tabernacled among us, to empower us to be that community that would live his justice, that, as this would say, God gave us the gift of his Son to redeem us, what we could not do in our own strength. We can't do this by trying harder, brothers and sisters. We do this by surrendering. We do this by saying yes to God. We do this by saying, God, I will follow you. Open my heart. Transform me from the inside out. Lord, love my enemies through me. We do that by saying yes to him and his purpose. So he gave the gift of his Son to redeem us so we can live in freedom and actually reflect his character. And through the power of his Holy Spirit, walk in the life that he purposed, that he designed for you and I. I'm going to take a moment and just pray, if you would bow your heads. If you're here and you have not yet said yes to Jesus, you see all these commands and you think it's about rules. He's like, no, I want you to be in relationship with me. I want you to understand who I am. I want to be close to you. I want to be next to you. I encourage you in this moment to just open your heart and just receive Jesus as your Lord and Savior. Jesus, I give you my life. Lord, live in me. Help me to be that community, a kingdom of priests. Help this place, Donearl Covenant Church, Lord, will be this community that you call for, this precious, dear community to you that will live in proximity to you, that would allow ourselves to, Lord, just open up and love this world as Jesus distilled these commands. And I didn't come that they would be abolished, but to fulfill them, to do what we couldn't do. Jesus, we say yes to you. We're asking you to live in us, revive us, redeem us,